Good evening, everyone. I'll call the May 8th emergency Tolland Town Council meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. And please all rise for the allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That brings us to item 4, consideration of proposed 2024-2025 budget. Hand this over to Brian.
So as you know, last night or yesterday, we had a referendum that failed. We need to come up with a new budget to propose again. We have to do it in relatively short order so we can get the ballots over. I proposed a budget, as you probably read here, of a 3.49 tax increase down from a 3.78. That would mean a 1.3 mill increase, for a mill rate total of 38.63. Motor vehicles capped at 32.46, as we all know. My proposal includes an increased use of an additional $100,000 from the municipal tax stabilization fund, which brings us to the absolute limit that we can use by charter of $300,000. So basically, the decrease of $25,000 for revised budget of $44,646,148. Town operating budget $14,114,908. Debt $5,376,489 and capital $397,395, unchanged. Total proposed budget $64,534,940. The overall budget increase is 4.85%.
Thank you, Brian. All right. So with that, we'll open it up to counselors to discuss this proposal.
Sure.
Yep, Kelly.
We're going to see the field and we're here again, but I'm hoping we can have a really good discussion tonight. And so after reviewing again state of Passfield, it does seem like the average number is 3%. I would like to try and get towards that number. Trying not to use the unassigned balance, but from the conversation we have, that could change, or either look into other areas where we could reduce. We think no matter what, everybody's gonna lose somewhere, something somewhere tonight, and that's just the way it is, and that's what we're elected to do, is make those hard decisions. So that's just a starting point of 3%. I'm not sure. I mean, obviously we can't use any more than municipal tax stabilization fund. So, I guess run it, Jacob, the meeting, go around, what other people's thoughts are, just to get a general idea what people are thinking.
Yeah, we can start out with just general thoughts.
Okay.
Just to feedback. Sounds like you're thinking about a 3% increase. Comfortable with the added, with Brian's recommendation to use the full 300,000 stabilization funds. Open to discussion for how we get.
That's all I have for now.
Chris.
So I just want to read in on some of what colleagues talking about. I think the best result that come out of this, the best thing that's for the town, is when we all sort of give a little bit and are not 100%. We can walk away feeling like we've established a budget that we can all live with. I agree. I'm not a hard and fast 3%, but I do think working in that direction is where we should be going. I am okay with using $100,000 from additional from municipal tax stabilization. I still struggle to understand why we can't use not an aggressive amount of money from unassigned fund balance, but some additional money from that. While maintaining, 15% or higher in that, so that we don't negatively impact our bond rating. Sort of with the idea that we would anticipate more revenue next year. So that we're not in a cycle where we have to continually use that money. But like Colleen said, I'm okay with looking, working, hearing other proposals, and looking where we can try to trim the fat if we can. The only thing I just would like for us to be mindful of is that, at least at this point, the only department that has defense at all is the Board of Ed. So I would just maybe encourage us to at least start looking elsewhere, and then if we still have to get there, we can cross that bridge, get there, but.
What else?
Sure, so I agree with Chris. I think that looking at where we've cut so far, the only department we've cut from is Board of Ed. I agree with Colleen. I think in the past, the magic percentage has been around 3%. I think working towards getting closer to that 3% seems reasonable. But I would respectfully request to look into other departments and other avenues of using maybe some more unassigned fund balance before even discussing additional cuts to Board of Ed, since that's the only place where we have cut from at this moment. I think that we, in general, would like to stay open-minded to additional ways we can get this budget lower. But my only request is not to start trimming from where we've already trimmed from.
Joe?
Sure, so, I know there's a lot of people that are disappointed that this budget didn't pass. But such a high increase, still little to no chance in this town passing whatsoever. When you look at the history of the votes in this town, the makeup of this town, there wasn't an appetite for this large of an increase in this town. You just couldn't do it. So I think we have to be realistic about what the town has a tolerance for. And we can't continue to present budgets that most likely won't pass again, for a number of reasons. It doesn't make us look good. It could also potentially hurt our credit rating, and nobody benefits from that in any way. As a matter of fact, we probably anger our residents more presenting another high budget than a budget that the town has had to pass. We have to remember we're a rural town, not an urban town, so we're not going to be able to provide the same level of services that an urban town can provide. We don't have those resources, so we've got to be realistic here. I think 3% is a good number to start with. I am against using any unassigned fund balance simply because, and I've used this example before, it's like taking out a mortgage that you can't afford and then using your savings to basically pay the first year of your mortgage. At the end of the year, you burn through your entire savings and you still have a mortgage you can't afford. And that's basically what you would be doing if you tap into your upside. I think that the tax stabilization is step there. So let's use it for that. I think we max out 200,000 nations. So that's kind of
Let's, I'll look for now. So I agree. I think that 3% is a reasonable number. I think something that seems like we get majority support here, which it needs to at the end of the night. I agree with Joe. I'm not comfortable with tapping into unassigned fund balance. I know we're trying to have a longer conversation about how the change in how the rating structure is going to work over the summer. Looking forward to that conversation. Potentially maybe after that, we might discover some news that might be good news, but at the moment, I'm very nervous about what the consequences of that. It doesn't help us to get downgraded and then have to pay more for it. That we're not saving. Um, as far as reductions go, I'm open to exploring multiple things, town and Board of Ed side. I would like to do our best for their staff, particularly on the town side, really much influence of what the board does, but that would be a goal of mine. I did have, forgive me, because this has been on short notice, some numbers here. I don't know if Lisa could help with some of the analysis here. We used the tax stabilization, 300,000 as Brian's proposing, and got down to a 3% increase. Would spending reductions equal about 240,000? Okay, so I did that math. Correct. Okay.
Just about.
Yeah, so a couple ideas I did want to discuss. One is just a straight 70-30 proportional reduction based upon what the pie chart looks like, Board of Ed versus town. The other thing I did want to understand a bit, I know this might not be popular, but it's not, it's staff reduction is looking at bulky waste pickup. But I was having trouble finding the correct number for that.
About 15,000.
It's about 15, oh, just
It's
15,000.
20, closer to 20.
Oh, closer to 20?
Yeah, went up this year. I think it was 19.
I think I only put 15 in. Okay,
Yeah,
well,
but
find out.
No, not overly popular.
All right, well, thanks for clearing that up. So anyway, that's kind of where I'd like to start things, maybe 70-30 split for the 240,000 reduction. That would come out to approximately 170 or 70,000 on the town. With direction from the manager to not get to that 70,000 reduction. Staff actions. So. With this,
I understand that the Board of Ed budget is obviously the largest proportion of our budget. I'm definitely not comfortable with a 70-30 cut, given that the Board of Ed is the only department that we have already cut. And so I'm not comfortable with a 70-30 split.
just as a clarifying question, I made some.
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact number. It was to DPW.
Right, but that it was because they didn't need those funds because we had a grader. So there was 25,000 we saved from that because we had purchased the grader. So it doesn't reduce their services at all. They still providing level service.
I cut a lot. I'm gonna back jump in.
Sure.
I cut a lot from DPW in the line by line process. From them. I can't come in with a big budget and try to bluff and then cut. I come in, I skim everything I can line by line with each director, and I come in here as bare bones as possible. And I did hit, unfortunately, I think Scott got the most. And I still have the documents. I can show you where I took 2,000 here one time, and upwards of 20,000. He was promised an extra staffer. I didn't even put it in. Promised him by council, and I didn't even put that in. So yes, they were cut. That being said, I understand the 3% number. Inflation's awful in this country. Inflation's awful in the state, and it's awful in Tolland. 3% is the standard number on your average year. I get it. With adding nothing, with cutting everything, our budgets went up well over 3%, as you know. For me, you want to talk about town services, tell me what you want to cut. Look at it.
Just so I'm understanding, because I'm happy to be corrected.
Guys, I don't mean to interrupt.
Oh.
Apparently there's a sound issue.
Oh,
Extra.
One person you getting that from? Jen?
There was a couple people I got a text from saying that the town sounded choppy, but then maybe Mike could.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is a slight choppy, but you could, I guess if people just try to talk up as much as they can, it is a little choppy. I'm not sure why, but you can pretty much hear if you talk loudly, I guess. But
Does that help a bit?
Mike, test 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
testing.
you're fine, Brian. I can hear everything you say always. Um, but it sounds good right now, but it is a little choppy sometimes. I'm not sure why. If it gets worse, I'll let you know, I guess.
I just have one question. So I understand what you're saying and I agree, and I don't wanna have to reduce from any department. And obviously, Dr. Willett did the same thing before his budget came forward. Are we still providing the same services to residents as we were under the current budget?
Yes, the level of services might be, not, obviously without the DPW worker that we lost. You know, does the grass field at the baseball field get cut before the game Saturday? I don't know if they can do it. You know, there's, as we're adding services to DPW,
Mhm.
we're not keeping up with the staff. But I knew not even to approach, with that we'd have to cut it. And it's not the year for it. Yeah, I'd say we are, though, Chris, providing the same services. Nothing's been caught yet.
Thank you, and thank you for your efforts to go through the budget line item as well.
Anything else, Chris?
No.
Okay. Jen?
I know you said you went line through by line, I don't doubt that whatsoever with DPW. I think the same argument can be made on the Board of Ed side, that we have the entire Board of Ed coming together and discussing their budget before it's even proposed to us, making cuts. I mean, it is not as the superintendent proposed to the Board of Ed, and they did make additional cuts before it came here. And again, it's the only department where we were making additional cuts where they were actually going to be losing positions or services as a result of our cuts. I don't know if we can say that about any other department, which is why I hold still that we should be looking elsewhere prior to trying to cut further from where we're already cutting, just because that's the biggest chunk of our budget. I think that's, you know, maybe it's an easy route to go, but it's not necessarily the right route to go.
Anybody else?
What was the percent you were at?
3%. 240,000 roughly of reductions across the board.
So I was just wondering, like, what is like a 3.1 or a 3.2? Like if our dog, just give me is it, you know, 100,000 or 125?
3.1, we need to take it 295 as opposed to 3, which was 340. Now you whack the 100,000 off of it from the additional tax stabilization fund. 3.1 gets us to 195 that we have to find as opposed to 240.
What did you say, Ginger? 3% on what?
3% with this tax stabilization fund increase was 240,000. Yes.
This would be 195. Yeah.
195, and that was at 3.1 or 3.2?
3.1.
It's really hard to get what everybody's saying, they don't wanna reduce anymore on the Board of Ed. Yeah.
And I don't want to reduce. The downside, obviously, either. What are we at the unassigned balance right now? Like how much? Because we're expected to get another 600,000 by the end of the year.
Yeah,
And the 700,000 roughly gonna be in the municipal tax stabilization fund. By the end, and then right now there's about 400 or 500,000 in each of, so the last, we had. So
I have
is there
some
room in
notes
the
here.
insurance line on the town side? Or good side that could be reduced a little without affecting anything? CD, if we needed that, I mean, just an idea. Maybe not favorable, but it's just eliminate any other program cuts or staffing. Dean, I think you're gonna say.
Sorry, I was just trying, I had some calculations and some tiny here. I don't have the fund balance right now because we haven't finished the year yet. But based on my last projection for the financial report that you just heard last week or the week before, the estimated unassigned fund balance would be about 11,656.
11 million.
11,656.
11 million, what was that, Lisa?
656, 512. That's with that,
Additional.
right. Then you'll be taking 300,000 off of that based on what's in the budget right now. And also, the municipal tax stabilization fund comes, off of that number as well, because the general fund, by accounting rules, we have to put that all as part of that balance. So that's gonna come down once whatever you do with this budget.
So is that, I thought there were two different, I thought the tax and the unassigned were two different.
There are two different funds. But when it comes time to report it in the financial statements, they'll be shown separately, but the grand total includes the tax stabilization fund as well in that number.
Yeah.
So, so right now we have about 500,000 coming off of that number for the next budget. Using towards the budget as it stands right now. What are you trying to get at?
I'm just trying to find other ways, other ideas, how to not reduce any more staff or, the town side. The insurance, I know. Talk about the insurance and the insurance line, when he talked, I don't know what that gentleman's name was. Last meeting, he said we're gonna be about 400,000. Right now, there is a $400,000 plus in there. And I had asked if that was reason, standard, and obviously it fluctuates, and of course, the end of the year is when people are gonna start using the insurance. So I'm just wondering if that is a potential.
I couldn't comment on that. That would have to be a consultant, and Mike Wilkinson is more involved with that than I am. Certainly I know that the Board of Ed has used some of it in part, and the town may have used a little bit as part of this whole budget process as well to keep the increase to zero. So they've already planned on using some of those funds. I really can't comment on the specifics because I haven't been involved.
Yeah, I would just want to comment. So, again, we go through a whole process on where we set the budget for each HIP. Again, it's an enterprise fund. We're our own insurance company. And, as I've mentioned before in other meetings, I would strongly suggest not to use the ECHIP fund as a budget balancing tool for the town. Every fall and winter, we go through a very detailed process with the Board of Ed to figure out where we need to be. That would be my point of view. I wouldn't recommend using anything from the E-chip fund to balance or change the overall town budget. That would be my recommendation.
Who's that? That's Mike Wilkins. Okay.
Thank you,
Director of Administration.
Mike, for that. I get it was just a idea. It was something but that's
Mike,
all. Let's go ahead. I'm all
I
set.
got a text about the volume still being crappy. Mike, can you hear okay, or is it still spotty?
I can hear okay. It does kind of clip a little once in a while, but I can hear everything. I can hear everything, I guess is my point, but it is a little chippy sometimes, but just try to talk loud as best you can.
I guess I do have one more question. I know at the last budget meeting, which seems like a ago, you, Lisa, I don't want to say you, but Lisa, you had mentioned that with the bond rating that those, I don't know what you call it. So where guidelines were gonna
The
change.
criteria,
The
yes,
criteria
yes.
we're gonna change, it doesn't really seem to match what policy is that still higher at that, higher when you mentioned it last time? Like, you know what I mean? I feel like that standard is higher than what our policy is.
We don't know that yet, right?
Well, we're still looking at the criteria and reviewing it right now, from the preliminary review of the criteria. In the past, we had to keep our AAA rating, our financial status, had a higher weighting. And now they're changing more to demographics as well. And one of the things that they said in their commentary to me is that, you know, the higher fund balance, if you start lowering your fund balance, that could potentially reduce your rating. I don't know what's going to happen. They have not set us up for the review yet. They're doing several other communities. So I don't know where we're going to go, but the potential is that it could go down. So that at this point, the strong fund balance will help us. I can't tell you for sure what's going to happen
Okay.
until we go through that process.
Hoping we need more of an answer. I
Did I say
think that's
too much?
something we definitely need to review to match, align the, at least closely aligned.
That's a question to Colleen.
Yeah, I'm also.
Colleen?
Is it a follow-up question? No, to Colleen's question, to leave.
It is quick, there's a.
In the past, there was like, we wanted to keep between 10 to 15% for the unassigned. If in theory, to get down to that 15%, because we're above that now, how much money is that we're talking?
I looked at that today, actually. If you're already using 300,000 of fund balance, plus another 2 from stabilization. If you took another 400,000 from fund balance, that would bring you down to close to 15%.
Total of 700.
Right, plus the other 2 that's coming from stabilization.
Okay.
So if you took another 400,000, that means next year you're gonna have, if you kept the stabilization at the 200 and all that, you're gonna start the year off needing $900,000 of extra revenue that you're using this year. So you're gonna need another 900,000 just to start out where you are with this budget, if you were to do that.
Correct.
So that's the thing to keep in mind. And then at that point, that would also, if you did use more fund balance next year, then that will certainly bring that percentage way down maybe closer to your 10% minimum in the following year if you were to try to use up more fund balance. It's just the council decision on where you want to go with that and just caution you as to, you know, how you manage it in the future.
Joe or Alex?
Sure, so, I know it's tempting to use the unassigned fund balance. It is really fiscally irresponsible to even think about it, and I don't even think it should be brought up, because it makes no sense whatsoever to do that. You just don't do things like, would you do that in your own budget? Would you go out and max out all your credit cards knowing you can't afford to pay them back, and then think, well, I've got some savings, and then you still got a ton of debt that you have to try to deal with the following year. So it makes no sense whatsoever. It's just a bad financial thing to think about. Brian, to your comment about, tell us what you think we should cut. And I'd like to say that, we're all volunteers here. You don't have the expertise to tell you that. I think you need to reach out to your experts. And have them tell you where they could possibly, make the cuts that's the least painful.
That's what would happen. That would be a consensus internal, once we have a number. Okay, let's put our heads together. Where can we find this money? And it's every department, it'll have a light shining on it.
Yeah, I think we still have to decide a couple things, like, do we do the 70-30 split? Do we basically say we prefer that you do not touch public safety, something along those lines, and then your team can work around those more broader criteria.
Probably not.
No, it's a challenge. But anyway, I think that's something we need to perhaps discuss.
Do you have anything else, Joe? Good. Again, I agree as far as the fund balance is concerned. I just think it's a risky proposition this year. And as Lisa pointed out, it might feel good not to cut something this year, but we're gonna have the same conversation next year. It's difficult getting this year's budget past the voters. It's gonna be even harder. You have to put all that money back and worry about all the other increases that are gonna inevitably be coming next year. So it's not a fun situation to be in, and I think we are, at the point where we're gonna have to start thinking about what kind of sacrifices do we have to make. It's not pleasant, it's not a fun job, but I feel like that's the right approach we need to take. Anything else can either cause problems now or it's gonna cause problems here. As far as the proportion goes, I would be much more comfortable with the 70-30. I think that's reasonable just because that's about the breakout between the two. I was open to discussion if people wanted to talk about changing that ratio. That's I think everybody who's wanted to speak once my particular proposal has, so anybody else have any comments to make? Yeah, Joe?
Yeah, I think you have a great point about the problem we would have next year, because if you look at the history of what's passed in this town, we've never had 2 years in a row where 3% passed. So when we hit 3%, the town says enough is enough. They won't go for another 3%. So even at 3%, I think it's going to be a challenge in this town. So we, it's painful. Every town right now in Connecticut is going through the same thing we're going through. You see it on the news. Many towns that have passed, really high budgets. I think Enfield's like trying to propose a 6% increase in theirs. Hartford, I know, is in the news tonight that they're looking to, they can potentially eliminate 120 positions in their schools. So teachers have received pin slips that they may not have a job next fiscal year. So we're not in those kind of dire straits, not even close. But we have some hard decisions to make here. Unfortunately, town's gonna have to live with it. Because it's not us, it's the voters that make the decision.
Yes, Jen?
I disagree with the unassigned fund balance. And especially the analogies, we're not talking about using credit cards here. We're talking about revenue that we've had. The taxpayers have actually already paid that we're sitting on top of, that we're not using. That we are conservatively supposed to keep between 10 to 15% of, but we have far exceeded that amount. And we are talking about not using that additional revenue at a time where we can and we should be using that additional revenue. And we are assuming that next year, nothing else will be coming in. And I think that's a really, I'm not unfair assumption, but I think it's just not reasonable to assume that we're not going to be getting additional revenue. We have a dispensary now, we have Starbucks coming in, we have Santini that's going to be opening, we have a reeval. We are anticipating additional revenue in the future. So to say that next year we're going to be in dire straits as a result of using more unassigned fund balance is completely false. I think this is the time that we use this money because we are just literally sitting on top of taxpayer money and not using it. I think giving this doom and gloom narrative that next year we are going to just be in a terrible position financially is, as a town council, it's really not correct. And it's not what we should be saying. And it's not, in my opinion, responsible to be saying that. We're not saying we're going to deplete this completely. We're saying there are additional funds that we can use reasonably that are still being conservative with the money and still leaving a good portion of that money in reserve. That could help us now when the town needs it, and it could prevent us from further reducing other departments. It seems correct to use this money because we are literally just sitting on it. This is not a savings account. It's not a savings account. That analogy stinks.
Yes. Chris?
Just one comment and one question. So, I mean, it seems a little bit disingenuous to be suggesting, like, or arbitrary, to say that, like, we're using $300,000 from unassigned fund balance, and if we use $301,000, then we are at risk of damaging our credit rating, right? And I'm not suggesting, and I know your position, Counselor, say, like, I respect it.
No, I just want to make a correction. So it's not the 300,000 coming out of the unassigned fund balance. That's the tax stabilization fund, 300,000. So it's two different, those are two
Well,
different.
how much is currently coming out of the unassigned fund balance?
300,000.
Thank you. So it doesn't make any sense to draw a line arbitrarily at 300,000. And I would just ask the town manager, you know, if you've had a chance to, you know, think this or to talk with your staff about, is there an amount of money that you or the staff is comfortable additionally taking out of unassigned fund balance?
Well, so the answer, I guess, is we're never overly comfortable, and, you know, our job is to protect the AAA rating, so we get the best rates, so we don't end up in financial dire straits. I want to dearly protect this council from not being the council to lose the AAA. Those considerations in our minds, Lisa and I discuss those type of things and look at how much money can we do? How much are you comfortable? Lisa, you know, is a sage in these sort of things in regards to what is she comfortable with? She, you know, we are comfortable doing 100,000 more from unassigned fund balance, but that is it. After that, Lisa's going to be too nervous to come to work. We take it more.
No, and I appreciate that, and I'm glad to know, because I don't want to put us in financial jeopardy, so thank you, I appreciate the information.
Can I have a point of clarification for that? So we were originally, back in the original budget, we were taking 200,000 out of the tax stabilization fund. Then your latest proposal takes another 100,000 out of the tax stabilization fund. So we have 300,000 coming out of the tax stabilization fund.
Before. Correct?
I'm sorry,
400,000?
from unassigned fund balance and then another if you do another 100,000 from your stabilization fund, you're looking at 700,000.
Right. So 4 and 3.
So when did we pull the money out of the unassigned fund balance? Is that a revised number in your latest budget?
It's just something we talked about hypothetically, Lisa, if they want to pull from unassigned fund balance tonight. Or-
Totally,
Understood.
100%.
Yep, I get that. I'm just, that's our discussion is for transparency and let us know what the numbers are.
Can I just, sorry, clarification on Joe's clarification. So under the budget that went to referendum and failed, how much money were we using from municipal tax stabilization? How much money were we using from unassigned fund balance? Like total, sorry, go ahead.
2 and 3.
So 200 from municipal tax stabilization and 300 from unassigned fund balance. So we were already at, that's where we were.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And then, more clarification on that. So now, with the 300 out of the unassigned fund, and you're proposing another, how much out of the unassigned fund?
100.
And then 200 out of the, or 100 out of.
We're fine, let's just say we're completely fine with 300 going to the max in the municipal tax stabilization fund.
Okay.
So adding 100 there.
Yeah.
And then adding,
It brings it to a total of 3.
yep,
Okay.
and then adding 100 to,
Out of the
Unassigned.
fund balance.
Yeah.
There was originally 200,000 back in the original.
yep, so bringing that to 4.
No, it was 3.
It was 3 originally,
Oh. In this.
in the one that failed.
Input budget,
Yes, there was 300,000 from unassigned fund balance and then 200,000 from stabilization for a total of $500,000 applied towards this budget. Which means next year you will also have to have another 500,000, which with the stabilization fund next year and your fund balance, you could probably manage that. Because you have to take, several years down the road until you start deciding how you want to phase in the non-use.
Yep.
And right now, the manager has only proposed another 100,000 from stabilization fund. The question came up, Counselor Moran, how much more from unassigned if you were to do that? That's where the other, he didn't propose using another 100,000.
But if you're holding our feet to the fire. We could stretch and, we'll sweat for next year. But again, I understand your position.
Councilman,
I'm good, thank you.
anyone else? To speak?
I just have a,
Yes.
again, I'm not. So so I guess what percent does this get us to if we use 300 from the municipal tax stabilization and 400 from the unassigned? Is that, Brian, your proposal that you have here?
No, I did not want to put in any more from the unassigned fund. It's just, but I was fine bumping that municipal tax stabilization fund up. So I mean, we would have to work the numbers
Okay,
to see where it is, but in regards to, if you want to get to a percentage, I can tell you, we can work out the numbers, if we add the 100,000 to municipal tax stabilization fund, if we don't or do to the unassigned fund balance, and then you want to get to a percentage, then I can get you that number of what we have left, which we would have to find, either out of the Board of Ed or the town budget or both, and figure it out from there. Do you understand?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah,
me too.
I think I do. That sounds like you've rehearsed
No,
and got your information, which is pretty impressive, Brian. It really is. I think if I have. Yeah, I guess there's so much talk about that unassigned fund balance, I guess. What is the big purpose of having so much?
For unassigned,
Yeah, what, you know what I mean, just generally so people can maybe understand the advantages of having a higher amount.
in there and not drain it. I mean, I disagree with Jen on the one with the savings. I do think it's like a savings thing. You use it and every year you have to, you know, fill it. And like you said, Jen, there are other opportunities, like you mentioned, that there will be future revenues too, so. I agree with you. I would disagree on one and agree with one. Yeah, sorry. But anyways, yeah, I mean, what is the general?
The purpose of the fund balance is to protect the town against unforeseen situations. We could have a tornado come through town, not to say it would, but, you know, it could level a building or some sort of drastic service reduction. It's the ability to respond to, say if you have a shortfall in revenues, but you still have to continue services in any one budget year, you have the ability to have funds in your account to be able to provide the cash flow for, you know, shortfalls in revenues and all that. Certainly that all that would have to be looked at. If, God forbid, something happened, you look at freezes, things like that, in the process, but it's the ability for the town to be able to respond during, you know, crisis and economic situations. And that's what the rating agencies look at as to how quickly you can respond in an emergency or forward in the future.
Okay. All right. I think 70. I know I've talked about this split it accordingly to that, but 70, 30 would be roughly 130 Board of Ed, and what actually, if we did a 3.1, I'm still hooked on that 3.1 and that number, I think Brian, you said a reduction was 195.
Yep.
Oh, good, I have the notes.
If you approve the additional 100,000,
I think
the
everybody's
max
got
amount, 300, okay, I concur.
So I haven't really kept.
No, worries.
Just thinking 170% on BOE would be 138 and 58 down, is that 70-30?
Yeah,
About 137, 136.5 on the 195 you're talking about? 3.1%.
Yes.
So it'd be about 136.5 for the board. And, 58.5 for the town. If you were to do a 3.25,
No, you know my,
it's 230.
that,
If you were to consider a 3.25% tax increase, that number would be 230,000, of which if you took 100,000 from stabilization, you'd have 130 that you'd have to reduce in spending.
and then that 70-30 would be.
$91,000 for the board.
And I want to know what was the amount? I'm sorry, yes, I thought you already.
No, I wasn't planning on it. It just happened to
Oh.
39,000 for the town. That's at a 3.25. If that were something. I just had a few numbers here. It's, I don't know what you guys were gonna throw out, so I tried to come with some numbers.
So we have that. Random. Spreadsheet that. Let's go back in the pounds at top of us. Just kind of think. Apologize. Jacob, if you want to go around, like, look this up, or if you want to give me a second.
Anybody else want to speak? Well, all right, we'll just wait.
I was just so when it. Last year. It passed that. 3.08. And then when we did do a just general 3.25, it did fail. But I think we gotta remember that we started pretty high. Brian's 5%, then we got it down to 3.7, and now we're gonna even lower it a lot. I agree with Brian. Everything goes up. Cost, right? So. I honestly don't mind the 3.25, I don't know how I really feel about the 70. We split, but, I don't know, I think we reduced, colleagues have said we reduced over 400,000 plus, plus the town has already reduced a lot within their own department budgets. And I think if we all work together, we and explain to people why we got to this number, I think it could pass. It'd be hard, but I mean, I think it's a much better starting point. So, I know, Joe, you're gonna say no, but I just really want you to really think about it. We're not using any more on a side. Love you, Joe, you know. What I mean. I can feel I can shift the clear. Knicker over there, this is something confusing, but I mean, really, I mean, we have reduced a lot from what we originally started. We started over 5%. I can't remember because it seems like years ago now. Then we reduced it and now we're reducing a lot. So what was the original amount, Brian?
I can't remember.
It was like, you
Bring my
said,
book up.
For what? I'm
The
sorry.
original manager's proposed budget, that had included the full board event.
no, it was.
No.
No, I mean, the whole budget that Brian presented to us, it was,
It was over 4%.
Yeah.
It was probably closer to 5%.
Yeah.
That's
5%, 4.89, and we dropped it, and now we're gonna drop it even more. I mean, we're dropping it a lot. It's not like it's a little bit. It's a good chunk, so just try and keep an open mind on it. We're not touching anything. We're keeping the numbers, and again, I'm not sure about the 70-30, if we tweak that, but you can keep an open mind, Joe. We all gotta give and take, or we're gonna be here till midnight again.
No.
Right.
I
So,
don't think that's gonna happen.
so that's what I'm saying, that, we all do have to give and take, and again, it's up to the voters. We are responsible for what we think could pass, I mean. So, you know, I've seen things out there, 3% or whatever, but I mean, I think if we explained enough how much we went down and how we got there, people might understand it. That's my soapbox. And I wanna add to that, sorry, I know I always do that,
Like there's more.
There's more. I agree, I do not wanna, touch public safety nor alarm.
Good. Colin, you're good.
I'm good.
Okay.
Wait, I got another question. I'm good, thanks.
So your suggestion, 3.25.
The split, I'm not,
Yeah,
you know, if others are willing to talk about that number.
yeah. Well, I think open to having a conversation about that too. What are people's thoughts on the 3.25?
Is there a breakdown of the 3.25 or just in general?
That's a question. Just in general, because I think Lisa just gave us some numbers and then, right, so it was original, we started with the 70-30, because that's how you would proportionally to the budget. That is larger. Again, they had reductions. So 70-30 to me is the starting point, maybe we end there, but I mean, I just. Guess my bottom line is I think we could get a 3.25. Done. And just figure out. How we wanna split, but that's a specific number.
Are we on a new round? I don't wanna
Yeah.
overspeak.
Go ahead.
I think 3.25 is a good idea. I think it's kind of a midpoint between the three, and then I think what the town manager proposed. I would suggest if we were talking about doing a 70-30 split, that it would be a true 70-30 split. I think as it's kind of been discussed tonight, it's like a $400,000 reduction on the Board of Ed side, and then a 70-30 split on top of that, which is kind of disproportionate. It's not 70% Board of Ed, 30% town. I think if we're gonna propose 70-30, it would be the true 70-30 split.
Trying to just think what you mean by that. Do you mean like additive, like over the past two? Like we make cuts on the first round of negotiations,
that was-
and then we made additional ones, you would want it to be proportional in total, is that?
So maybe I'm misunderstanding what was being proposed for the 70-30 split, but my understanding was it was in addition to the already 400,000 that was proposed last round, we would split the additional cut, remainder, whatever that number is now, which God knows what that is now. My impression was that it was that number that we were gonna split 70-30 on top of the already proposed cut of 400,000. Does that make sense to everyone, or does that sound like a word jumble?
I think it's not the word, but I think we're just very tired.
I think you're speaking cumulatively. I think she's saying,
Put it into words for me, please.
no, I think what you said when you were confirming what she said is right, which is that, or what she said, what she's saying, and I agree with her, is that we don't just pretend that the $400,000 cuts didn't happen and we start like from like this clean slate now. We just at least factor that in to the 70-30 split where you just have to take into account that they were already cut by 400,000 and the town hasn't received a corresponding decrease. So it's not as though, I guess the point is, it's not as though we're starting today on a clean slate and no one's been cut and we're just trying to figure out how to move forward. Is that right? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying if we're cutting 70-30, so 70% of what we're cutting from the original proposed budget is coming from Board of Ed, and then 30% is coming from the town, that it should be a true 70-30 and not cut 400 from Board of Ed. And then for the remainder of what we're cutting, split that 70-40. That's what I'm trying to say. I feel like I'm getting blank stares.
No, I agree. I thought that's what
Saying,
you're saying.
I think you're just, you're saying include that.
Yes.
That's what you're saying, include the 400.
As part of
Part
the
of the
70,
part of the 70%. That's what you're trying to say.
correct.
Yes.
Thank you. I knew we'd get there.
I guess I'm just a little confused how, like, what the net numbers would actually look like. I saw Lisa, were you nodding your head? Do you, what the estimates would be for anybody?
I have no clue,
Okay,
because I could tell you what it is if you're taking another, adding 100,000 from stabilization and 130, 70-30 split, I could tell you that. But as far as, the cuts that have already been made, these numbers are based on the budget that was proposed for referendum. So I don't have any of those calculations. I could just think that if you're looking at, let's say, in $600,000 from the original budget that the manager proposed.
Yeah.
You're gonna look at a pretty significant hit to the town and adding back money to the Board of Ed, if that's your goal, I don't know. That, and, any big amount on the town, we're not as, able, because our budget is so small to begin with, to absorb it, so it would certainly be some pretty significant reductions that we'd have to look at.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of my
staffing, things
concern.
like that.
So if you're saying so. Yeah, I can't remember exactly. 400,000, just go with that. This would be an additional 130, so 530,000, split that 70-30. Is that what you mean?
So if we've already reduced the budget 400,000 and we're reducing it an additional 130, is that what we're saying?
Mhm.
Yeah, to get to 3.25.
Okay. Then you take that total reduction and split that number 70-30. That would be the 70-30 split.
Just. 160 almost. To the town. Yeah. A couple of firefighters.
Right. And I don't think, well, sorry.
Why you gotta put it in firefighter?
That's what I'd have to do for comp. Top and
That's the
firefighter.
biggest.
Who else, yeah, who else makes that money here in this town? Right.
All right, so Jen, I believe you had the floor, correct? Is there any other points that you had?
So what I'm saying is, cause what I was saying is, when you say 70-30, it's not being proposed as a 70-30 split. It was like a $400,000 reduction on the Board of Ed, and then whatever remainder, we would be splitting 70-30.
Yes, that was what was originally discussed.
Yeah.
Colin was speaking, yes.
So. Let me think about it. I don't wanna make everyone,
I think I know what you're trying.
what I'm saying is, I'm not proposing
Yeah, I do
that,
too.
but I'm saying that was actually what would end up being 70-30.
Right.
What I think was being proposed is like I can't freaking do the math, but it is not 70. What's actually being proposed. So it's not like you're taking the total reduction, splitting it 70-30, because then that would be a huge hit to the town. And that's not what I'm proposing. I'm just pointing out that that's not really a 70-30 split.
Okay.
What I would be proposing is trying to leave the Board of Ed at the $400,000 reduction as it was proposed originally. But in addition to what was being proposed for the municipal tax stabilization fund increase by the 100,000 and the unassigned fund balance by another 100,000, where does that leave us?
530. We have to find. Or that will be reduced by.
No, she's asking.
If you were to go with that.
Yeah.
Go right ahead. Please,
If you're
help the numbers.
contemplating the 3.25, which would mean a change of $230,000 some way, somehow.
Okay.
All right, if you were to take 100,000 from stabilization fund, that leaves 130,000.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're proposing taking another 100,000 from unassigned fund balance in addition to the stabilization?
Correct. So if
Then
we're
that would be
saying,
30,000 that you'd have to find in reductions.
correct. So what my proposal was, if we have a total in municipal tax stabilization of 300,000, we have a total of unassigned fund balance of 400,000. We leave Board of Ed as what was proposed, the 400,000. Now that leaves us with just trying to find an additional cut of 30,000. Is that correct? Did I do that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and then
Okay.
in the following year, you would have to come up with another $700,000 in the following year, just to start your year.
Correct.
Because you're not just using 700,000 this year.
I've heard this.
You'll have, and
We
that's
got-
for
yeah.
council to consider. It's
Yeah,
just,
we got,
you know,
yeah, we'll have to kick into consideration next year.
you know, do you want to raise taxes in the following year? Do you want to cut spending? Do you want to use more fund balance? It's, you know, there's
Or we
a lot
might be
of
getting
things.
more revenue.
Or,
you never
yeah,
know.
I mean, possibly. I know some of the places that the new apartment complex will not be in for this grand list. But, yes, you're right. There'll be the new apartment complex coming in. I don't know what's gonna happen with the,
So if I propose that, then that would in theory leave just an additional 30,000 in cuts that we would be needing to find.
I understand what your point is. You're suggesting use the additional 100,000 from the unassigned that what was proposed in Mr. Foley's budget, so that there's $30,000 in actual to get to a 3.25.
Wait,
I think we might, I think we need a whiteboard.
yeah, we're not math.
I have it.
Thank you.
So you, I'm sorry, I don't have to speak up. Everybody.
Is it a direct question for Jen or?
I think it's more a follow-up to. This increase.
Yeah.
Stuff, so,
I'll come back, sorry.
yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
No, I know you haven't really gone, so.
Yeah, Chris, do you want to speak?
So I understand Councilor Said's position on this, so I know, I guess I would like to know if there's room for us to work on using more from the unassigned balance, right? Like the town manager, again, it's not an ideal situation, but the town manager said that the staff, at least if we were going to do it, could go up to 100. I guess my question is like, is there any room to talk about that? Or, I mean, I know Joe is a no. I guess that's my question. Is there conversation to be had about that? Because I think it should.
Just based on what Lisa said, I'm a no too. You know, I don't wanna put any more wood on our fire right now.
I think that
Can I comment?
town said though that that was a comfortable number.
Right, that's the.
But I would be willing.
Did you want to hear other people's responses?
Sure.
Yeah, so first of all, to lightly brush off $700,000, what we have to find later next year is like, we'll worry about it later is insanity. Secondly, we looked at, we've had a 2.5% increase 2 years ago, 3.08% increase last year, closing a 3.25% increase this year. We have the 20th highest mill rate in the state of Connecticut. We're taxing our residents to death and we're tired of it. Firmly believe 3.
Colin, do you want,
Well,
or,
oh, yeah, you're still answering.
Colin, did you want to comment on that? I'll give my feedback, if you know.
No, Joe would be, and I understand what you're saying. Again, I go back to, it's like, to me, it just simplifies like a savings. I mean, people don't think that way, that's fine too. That's just simplifying in my brain, but again, I just really would at least appreciate if you think about the 3.25 and where we started and where we're down to and what we've already cut.
I know we have to cut it. It's not gonna pass. I don't want to be here 2 weeks from now doing it again.
So I just want to, at least for my question, the question that I asked pertaining to unassigned fund balance, so we can at least get past that, if that's not a topic, if that's not something that everyone's interested in. And the only other thing I'll say, and then I'll like stop beating this dead horse, is that it doesn't seem like there's ever gonna be an amount of money that's gonna get so high in our assigned balance fund that anyone's ever gonna be comfortable with using. And so we're overtaxing residents to just put this money in there for it to sit and never use. And so it doesn't make sense. Because because I'm not suggesting that we use a crazy amount of money. I don't want to get even close to the 700 total, whatever we're talking about. I'm talking about when we're in this sort of zone, and whether it's in an effort to get us to 3.25 without cutting, or whether it's in an effort to get us closer to 3, whatever. It just seems like at some point it's ridiculous to keep having more and more money in this when we're already over our 10 to 15% range, or we at least need to be honest about like what we're doing, because it's not 10 to 15%. So that's my point. And if there's not an appetite to do that anymore, then I have to live with that, but that's all I wanted to get out.
Thank you, Chris. Do you have any other? You want to say? Anybody else? I'm gonna answer your question, Chris. I'm still uncomfortable with it, to be honest. Got hear what Jen is saying. We could have some new revenue. I personally would rather see the revenue come in before we decide, we want to spend it a certain way. So a couple of years from now could be a very different conversation. That's just how I feel about it. As far as the 3.25 goes, I still think that's a bit high. I'm willing to talk about it though. I know we do have to get out of here with a vote, so I'm willing to talk about it. I do. I'll just full transparency. I just think we need to make some. Get to it. It's my opinion.
I.
Let's do this, Colleen. I think we talked about 3.25. Do you feel comfortable in motion? 2.5.
I'm not very good at doing this part, so
Yeah.
Sorry, no.
bear with me.
Yeah.
Everybody bear with me. So I like to. Okay, I like to make a motion for 3.25% tax increase. I don't know what all those other number numbers are gonna be. With not urgent staff in public safety and law enforcement in that town. And that 70/30, I'm still, I'm still not 100% comfortable, but I hear what finance instructor that's ever through that, and knows a lot. So I guess it's 3.25. Keeping a public safety law enforcement whole with a 70/30.
100,000 from
And 100,
stabilization.
yeah, stabilization. And
So
that's,
all this is second, but just a quick question for the record, is that specific enough to be? I know we had more of a template last time. I just want to make sure that people are clear what they're voting on and what it's.
Lisa, do you want to go work on numbers?
Yeah, what we
Yeah.
would need to do is if there's a consensus on what you want to do, maybe you could motion for a brief recess. I could go down and try to run the numbers to get you mill rates, tax increase, and all that, if there's a consensus on that number. It's up to you how you want to do it.
Yeah, procedurally,
I think you can do a short poll.
be clear, so you're suggesting,
Can I get some clarification? Were you
Yeah.
saying just 100,000 extra from the stabilization fund, not another 100 from the unassigned?
Correct, yeah.
Just,
Okay, thank you.
good.
Yeah, I told you I'm not a.
So do we need to second that?
I
They go
think,
to recess or?
I think you could probably just ask for a straw poll if people feel comfortable with that for Lisa to go over. Then, Laura, then we call it.
Well, for straw poll, I guess. Go around the room, but it doesn't count.
It doesn't, it's
Yeah.
just a straw poll to get a general
Determine
consensus.
how-
It's,
Where you want to go, and then, you just keep.
Are we
going.
talking about the percentage, or we talk like the 3.25 or whatever, or the 70?
oh,
So,
Let's see,
no,
let's see what-
yes.
Yeah, I'll consider it, so yes.
Yeah. So is it
How many no's?
I think there's, sorry, no, four no's.
Four no's and, yeah, two yes, and so you gotta start.
Yeah.
From the conversation we've just had so far, I think what next to do. There's not consensus on the 3.25, 70-30 split. We haven't talked about a different split. That, you know,
Can you just clarify with the seven, are we talking about true 70-30? Are we talking about?
the original 91 Board of Ed, 39 town, correct?
It's what we voted on.
So in
Like we're
addition,
doing, yeah.
That's the 325.
Yeah. Don't believe there's consensus on using the extra 100,000 unassigned. There's consensus on using 100,000. We haven't gotten a vote yet on 3%. Well, I don't think that would be unanimous, this conversation. You know, perhaps I'll just say, how about we move it towards a 3.1? Talk about that one next. Middle scenario, it's going to be 136.5. Reduction to Board of Ed, 58.5 on the town side for the 70-30 split. Yeah. I do have some, Alex.
Yeah, just really quickly, just to try to reach across to, Chris Moran's question. Or kind of some of the thoughts that you were sharing for the outside. So. I have a regular account that I use for my bank, and then I have a savings account. Then I have emergency fund. And from how I'm looking at the unassigned fund balance, that kind of seems like an emergency fund. The picture that was painted a few moments ago, a tornado coming through town, whatever that may be. I definitely agree with you that it kind of seems like we're just sitting. I hate that I have that emergency fund. There's a lot of money in it. But if my daughter's playing on a trampoline and breaks her leg, I have it. I can't predict what is gonna happen or what I'm gonna need that for. So that's just kind of my own prudent financial view on that. As far as, you know, that opinion coming from Lisa, I would so much rather be in a position next year where we can see what these great businesses have infused into our town. Be sitting even maybe a little bit higher and ready to have a more fervent discussion about what we're willing to use rather than right now. So that's just kind of my own thoughts on it, and however I could reach across the aisle to you or Jen, I would love to do, but not at that step. You know, if you were to say, well, for me, if you were to, my emergency fund say, well, we'll just take your trampoline away. That's fine. That might actually help me. Like, maybe my daughter will break her leg, but then what else could it be? I don't know. After the past 3 years, it seemingly could be anything. So it's just kind of my own view on that as far as the 30-70 goes. I'm not sure how we could reach something that would be more agreeable, in your opinion.
Am I allowed? Or if not, it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it free?
I mean, I was just. But,
Yeah, I'd like to hear what Chris said.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is free.
I guess one is just a response, and then another is just a question so I understand. So one is just, I guess my point is, it feels arbitrary where we're saying we can no longer, like, where that line is. Like, I think we can all agree that there's like a point at which it's like too much and we shouldn't be doing it.
Which is what?
I mean, like, no one.
We know, Lisa?
Well,
That is?
I-
That I would like.
the question I asked Brian, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, was that if we were to do it, like, how much additional from unassigned fund balance would the town be comfortable? And knowing that it's not an ideal situation. And the answer was additional 100.
The absolute max,
Yeah,
would be 100,000.
right. So,
Want to do that.
no, I'm not, I don't want to do it either, but there's a lot of things that we don't want to do. So my point is just like, at some point, we're drawing an arbitrary line and we're not, I would never propose anything more than what the town manager is saying, and and that may not be what this. The question I have for Lisa is that we keep talking about like, let's see what the revenue comes in and we can reevaluate this conversation. My understanding of how money ends up in the unassigned balance fund is when it's unanticipated revenue. What money ends up in the unassigned?
At the end of your year, your operations, your results of your revenues less your expenditures.
Right.
That net difference is what will go to unassigned fund.
Okay,
Well, it'll go to fund balance and then there's different
Sure.
accounting things.
okay, but so
Depending
let me
on where-
follow up on that. I feel like, so tell me if I'm wrong, how will we not always be in this situation? If that's what's happening, right? Like, we're talking about, okay, we'll talk next year if we have an increase in revenue. But if we're always, if that's always gonna be in excess of what we budgeted, and that money is then gonna get funneled into the unassigned fund balances, and however we do that via our policy, we will always be in the situation where we're putting the money in there and we can't touch it.
Well, each year we do utilize, I'm sorry, it's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Each year we do utilize a certain amount of unassigned fund balance in our budget projection.
Okay,
We may or may not use it depending on revenues. These past 2 years have been extraordinarily with the investment earnings and unanticipated grant proceeds from the state. The municipal tax stabilization ordinance governs that.
Yep.
But the investment earnings were never anticipated to be as high. So, for it to continue, I can't tell you if that's gonna continue in the future. I bumped up investment revenues this year.
Yeah.
We've tried to tighten other revenues, change, the calculation of the mill rate, and we took this year, a lot of the changes that went in, tightened that up even more.
Mhm.
So I can't tell you if there's gonna be a lot of extra revenue next year.
yeah, I guess,
It could, it may not.
yeah, I guess my fundamental question is not asking you to project that, it's just, I guess the question is, this time next year, hypothetically, if revenues were higher than what we projected, are we going to have the opportunity to use that additional money, or will it have already been put into the unassigned balance funds, and we will be exactly where we are now, where we can't use it?
That will be a council decision as to what they would like to do. Mostly what you normally do is you wait until the year end to see where your other revenues are, because you may have more revenues in one account, but a shortfall in another. But then the thing is, then you assign, like I said, in each year, we try to assign a certain amount fund balance to the budget to help offset it based on some of those revenues that come in.
Thank you.
Anyone
Yeah.
else, talk about the 3.1% this time? And Alex, you already went, so I'm gonna go to somebody else, anybody? Some thoughts on one?
Not happy about it, but I could potentially live with it, knowing full well we'll probably be back here 2 weeks to adjust it again. It's like, yeah, I think it's, taxing people too much. It's 3 years in a row of higher than average tax increases. People don't have, people kind of say that. But if that's what it takes to get everybody on board, then potentially do it.
Joe? Point, your thoughts on the 3.1?
I think he did numbers really, did run 3.1, Lisa, Brian.
Yeah, we did,
What did you need?
The numbers are given about 3.1.
3.1 if you,
136.
136.5 Board of Ed, 58.5 town, 100,000 tax stabilization.
I'm sorry, Lisa, 136.5.
Board of Ed.
Yeah.
58.5 town, and 100,000 from the tax stabilization.
That's the 70.
That's the 70/30, if that's what you all decide to do. I can run other splits too.
Which is up for debate.
Who's up 367?
Up on 36.5, Board of Ed, 58.5.
So just to be clear, just a question for clarity.
Sure.
We're talking a total reduction on the Board of Ed side of 536,000, is that what it is?
Cumulatively from the last round of meetings, yes.
And no one has concerns what that would do to the Board of Ed.
But this is, actually, you are the last person, or Colleen, that's actually Colleen's.
No, I think it's Jen, sorry. Okay.
I lost count.
Oh, I think you asked me how I feel about
Yeah.
3.1, that's what you were. No,
Yeah.
it's okay. I don't mind, something like that. I was just writing down 3.1, just trying to figure out the difference for the 3.2, to be honest. How much difference of that is. So 3.2 was not that much more than 3.1, right? Not that.
I had 325, I didn't do it for two.
Anyways. Imogen just said about the fire. I do have concerns. Obviously, I think we all do have concerns. You know. It's gonna be uncomfortable and people love me, and that's okay. I mean, I'm willing, if we're doing like a straw poll on this, is that what we're doing? I'm willing to at least see. I'm not making that motion though. It's
Going to consider.
willing to consider that. Yeah. But I think somebody needs to make the motion.
Yeah. I'll allow everybody to go around.
Okay.
Jen, apologize for getting.
No,
It's
you're
not
fine.
your-
So if we're talking about an addition, if we're talking about cumulative cutting $536,000 from our Board of Ed. I'm an absolute no. If you look at the other school districts, if you look at budgets in our surrounding towns, like even if you just looked at towns that touch that and looked at how much their Board of Ed is increasing, it's a significant amount. And the reason is because everything has gone up. I've spent a lot of time looking at, what is being cut elsewhere. It's just, they're maintaining. Tolland, I'm at a loss. I have never been involved in a town that has fought the Board of Ed so much and has looked at what the Board of Ed has already cut and gone, you know what? I want to cut more. And we're not talking a little bit, $536,000 in addition to whatever they've already cut on their end. Like, if you think that won't have a significant impact to our schools, there is something absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. If you want to spew a narrative that the Board of Ed is lying to us, that they are sitting on piles of money, we're like a Scrooge McDuck situation, that they're just on top of these coins, that is craziness. This will have such a huge impact. You want to talk about doom and gloom? Let's talk about what this is going to do to our schools. Because this is not just, well, everyone's sick of spending money, everyone's sick of being taxed. No one likes to be taxed. I pay my taxes, and I think everyone else here does too. but that number is insane. I mean, we're talking about teachers here, we're talking about our schools. I mean, it's a big part of our budget for an absolute reason. It's a big part of every town's budget. It's not just a Tolland issue. Every single town is dealing with this. But I'll be honest with you. I don't see the pushback that Tolland has on the Board of Ed in other school districts. I don't get it. I don't get where the narrative comes from. So I think that's really, really, it's irresponsible to cut that much from Board of Ed.
I'm the last person to speak. Yeah, I think. Yes, I counted your, because you had asked Alex a question, and you had additional statements.
Okay.
So. I'd say it's I'm kind of with Joe, I'm willing to get behind it. You need to get a number for us, I would certainly consider it. You know, I guess just a comment briefly on, you know, reductions. I think we're at a stage where just we're making hard decisions. I can't say that this is gonna be no impact. I don't honestly know. But you know, we had a referendum that thing, you know, historically about what passes and what doesn't. And we can't be here till July. That's the referendum. So I feel like we gotta come down. So I'm certainly willing to entertain a conversation. So. I think everyone has spoken at least once tonight. Is there anybody who wants to go a second time? Yes, Chris.
So for my first time on the 3.1%. All I'm gonna say is, and is that to the extent the goal here was to come to the table in like a good faith and try to meet each other, there has been zero of that. I mean, and now we're moving to 3.1%, which is going in the wrong direction. So obviously I don't support 3%.
Anybody else who speak for a second time?
Yeah, I would. Chris, how could we meet you in the middle? 3.25. Because, you know what I mean, I'm just trying to think of. We already, like Jacob just said, we already had a budget. We spent, I mean, not to our own fault, but there was a lot of factors, but we spent a lot of time here, the last one. And even the folks that were coming off the Board of Ed wanted it to be 30 or whatever, the highest percent you could think of. They were outvoted somewhere. It's that other side of folks that either don't have kids or the taxes are too high or whatever it is. Came out and said no. So that was kind of the chance for that. So I'm not sure what we could, like, I'm kind of imploring you or anybody really to, you know, I don't want to go against taking more money out of something that we shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, and that's fine. I will, I continue to respect all of you, and that's fine. We don't have to agree. It just doesn't feel like there's a lot of give and take here. And like there's a realm in which 3.25 I can get behind. I think the 70-30 split is the problem, but yeah, I think I don't really have anything else. I mean, Brian, do you have any opinion about 3.25, the chances of it passing? I mean, any insight that you would?
Yeah, I do. You know, I think everyone knows how I feel, at this point. We're at a point here where people are gonna start to lose confidence in us. No one likes the budget. I don't like it. You don't like it, you don't like it, we all don't like it. No one's happy here. But I think your constituents trust you. Your constituents trust you. Yours yours, and yours. They trust you. They trust what you say. Is that accurate? And if we support something, this is the best we can do. They understand that. It's awful this year. Teamsters, teachers, trash, insurance, gas, electric. We all know, and that goes over for all of us living at home too. We understand that, but our constituents trust us. I think if we all come to an agreement, for the most, we can pass a 3.25. I thought we could pass more. Absolutely, I'm wrong a lot. I made a career out of it. That being said, I do think we could pass 3.25. I know we could pass 3.1. I don't want to be back here. Lisa doesn't want to be back here. SPD doesn't want to be back here. We owe it to the town to come to some sort of consensus, and it stinks. And it hurts. I think it could make a 3.25 work. I think we can make a 3.1 work. I know I will. You know, whatever you tell me the number is, I'm gonna run the town as best as we can. We're all gonna be safe. We're all gonna have basic services. And I know Walt did the same thing with the schools. He always has. So, that's my opinion on the 3.25.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty good. I don't want to be a good chat.
Go
No. I know we're talking about the 3.1, can I grab the 3.25 since? Right, why not? Okay.
Yeah.
So if a town manager thinks 3.25, and I do too, I agree. If we all put the effort in, it could pass. So if we're gonna talk 3.25 and 3.1, maybe the best suggestion is just have Lisa run both numbers and talk about those two numbers and hash that out. So at least we have options to be looking at. That's what we've done, that's what we've done in the past. Lisa runs numbers, comes up, back up, and we discuss and vote.
Whatever your
But
pleasure.
I'm just saying, that's how we normally do it, so you see multiple ones instead of Lisa going up stairs to run scenarios. So I'm just putting that out there from past experience.
Guess I'm going to open that up for thoughts, people consider recessing.
I would like to make a motion for recess for Lisa to run 3.25.
Is there a second?
So the motion,
You know, I was gonna say, should we add in what we talked about, just from the 3.25, like 70/30 split and using 100K, like,
That
you
would
know.
be helpful for whatever I have to do.
Okay.
So I think she might need as much information as she
Yes.
does.
So I think we could probably amend, it's been seconded, I think we can probably amend your motion. Uh, oh,
I'll amend it and we'll revote on it. Strong. Not official, so, amending Alex's original, request. So like to see numbers on the 3.25 and a 3.1, not affecting public safety, law enforcement, using the 100,000. Additional 100,000 as the town manager presented, leave the debt, those other categories the same. I don't think anybody's wants to touch the capital, the debt areas.
Can I question that motion because Chris is.
Jen?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say.
Jennifer.
Software. Yeah.
Counselor, do you have any, because I know you're concerned about the 70/30 split, do you have any issues with not touching, as part of the condition here is to not touch public safety? Or to allow, or should Brian also consider a reduction in public safety in consideration of the percentage?
I don't have an objection to not touching public safety. I mean, I would like to run numbers that don't affect Board of Ed as much as we've been proposing tonight. But I don't have an objection to not touching public safety.
My only request, I agree with what Jen's saying, if, you know, whoever has made a motion at this point is willing to also ask Lisa to, you know, consider, in addition to the 70-30, like I don't know, 50, some other split, like I'm not set on a percentage, but I would like to see what those numbers would look like.
So like a 50-50 in both of those.
Sure. Yeah.
I guess since you made the motion, are you comfortable with this?
I would like to make a motion.
Nobody amended though, Jen didn't amend, or nobody amended, so I made a motion, I think that needs to be, that needs to be voted.
You amended?
Or are you gonna amend my amendment? It is complicated,
Maybe we do that, so.
we could, I mean,
Make a motion to amend. Ellen's motion to, to calculate 3.25, 3.1%. With two possible scenarios, 50-50 split in the reduction between Board of Ed and the town, that's 70-30. With using 100,000 of the tax stabilization, an additional 100,000. Cover it. You can second that amendment.
Second.
Lisa's that.
Yeah, I'll go right
I
now.
mean, it's strong. We didn't, like, we didn't go around.
Yeah, I think there's a motion on the floor. On it,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So. Motion is on. Having Lisa run those scenarios and then. So Chris,
And this is just to get the information, we're not actually vote, right?
just correct, just to get the information.
Aye.
Abstain.
Jeff, aye. Jen? I'm an aye as well. So we'll have Lisa run the scenarios. I'd also entertain a motion this time to recess for 10 minutes for Lisa to do that. All right, is there a second? Second. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Lisa, is that enough time? Is 10 minutes enough?
It may take a little longer, let me see how quick I can, you'll see me when I get back.
Yeah.
I'll try to make it.
Break it. Okay.
Oh, no, later.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we did it.
Very good.
Again, I am.
Oh, the-
Pictures you went away. Or. Good job. Unfortunately.
My wife, right before we left.
Whenever we move into, she was in the ocean. The rest of the trip. We're there for a whole week. So Thursday, yeah. No. But she had. Yes. But a little. I got it. Long, so long. So. Oh, let me get the. So we're doing. Our next. November Blues. Yeah. Media. Walk there.
Bunch of different hotels, used to ferry boat, hotel, park, it's really cool. It's just super. Started this doing. You know what, it's gonna take time away from the
We'll reconvene as a council. It's like the recording is still going, so I think we're all good to get going again. Thank you, Lisa and Ryan, for working on running those numbers. I guess the appropriate spot to start would be to just get a brief summary of what the numbers are, so you can be aware of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, rounding is always a problem in how I get this thing done. So I have 4 different scenarios. They are actually at a 3.11 and a 3.24. So one is higher, one is lower. It was the best I can do with trying to make the rounding work. So I can start out with the 2 3.11 scenarios if you'd like. Each one of those, one is a 50-50 split and one is a 70-30 split. But all these scenarios use $100,000 additional from tax stabilization. So with the 50-50 split, the mill rate would be a 1.16 increase, 3.11%, 38.49. That's the 50-50 split, which is reducing 97,500 from each side. That would mean,
Can you see the mill rate again? Yeah, I'm sorry.
sure, 38.49.
So what are we currently at? 37.
You know, I didn't
So,
bring the current budget with me after all that.
It's an increase of 1.16 mil, so it's gotta be a reduction. Do the math.
I didn't bring the other one with me. I didn't even think you would do
So you
that.
said a 1.16 mil increase?
It's a,
Yeah.
it's a 1.16 mils, 0.11% tax increase, 38.49 mils with a reduction in spending to each side for operating budgets of 97,500 each. I have percentages of what the town board operating budget overall spending. How deep do you want me to go with all of that? Are you just good for this for discussion point for the moment?
Yes, Lisa, so maybe you can give us a quick elevator pitch. 2-minute summary.
Sure, the overall spending in this scenario, again, this scenario is the 3.11 50-50. The overall spending increase, not tax, is 4.57%. The overall tax increase would be 3.11%. The increase in the town operating budget would be 3.51%. The board operating budget would be at 3.68%. And then our other percentages for debt and capital would stay the same.
Okay. I think that's probably good level of detail. So dive in later.
All right. The next one is the 70-30 split. Your mill rate and all will stay the same. Your spending increase will stay the same, 4.57%. The difference is that there would be 136,500 reduction to the Board of Ed budget and 58,500 to the town budget, which would give you the town operating budget increase of 3.8% and the board at 3.59%. Good. The next one, is the 3.24% tax increase with a 50-50 split. The mill rate would be 38.54, which is a 1.21 mill increase, or a 3.24% tax increase.
1.21.
1.21 mils, 3.24% tax increase. Overall spending would be a 4.68% increase. The reduction to the town and board would be $65,000 each. The spending increase for the town operating budget is 3.75%. Board of Education would be at 3.76%. The next scenario is the 3.24% tax increase with a 70-30 split. Again, everything stays the same regarding the mill rate and the spending increase. The difference is that the reduction to the Board of Education would be 91,000 and the town would be 39,000, which would give you a town operating budget spending increase of 3.94% and the board of 3.70%.
That's the
That's it.
last one.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So thank you again for running all those numbers. It's a good amount of information to absorb. So now open the floor, talk about both scenarios. Feel free to give your preference, any additional thoughts, questions you have. Anybody would like to go first?
So. Sure, I will know, I'm talking. So Lisa, the tax. The rates that you show for the board, it still considers the fact that the USIP fund was moved, the debt was moved out of the Board of Ed.
Yeah, I didn't change any
Ending
of that.
balance. Not beginning balance.
Say that again?
The USIP fund, you're still considering the fact that it's in the beginning of the year number, but not the end of the year. The debt.
Right,
So the Board of Ed is still showing that it had the
Right.
debt expense in the beginning of the year budget, but it's not in the end. of the
right.
year.
It was just reclassified from the
Right, so
board
the
and the
real-
town
The real increase is higher when you consider
on both sides.
you move the debt. Um. So
Anyone else?
Oh, there's a lot. So,
Yeah, nothing, take your time.
um, so. I think looking at all four. The 3.24. Still think we can do it, especially after the town manager said. We can do it. Job to do it. Job is to let people know why we need these things, period. I think I'm okay with the 70-30 split on that one, again. everything else Lisa said. Okay. Right? And that's just that. Whatever, I mean, no one wants to have the detail, but overall. That scenario, I would be. Comfortable with, and again, it's up to the voters to decide. Ultimately up to the voters.
Anything else, Colleen?
Yeah, I do. I'm good. Yeah, good.
Anybody else? Yes, Jim?
I would just ask in each one of these scenarios, since we're breaking it down by town and by Board of Ed, further reduction, what this would mean to the town and what this would mean to the Board of Ed if we were to reduce by these amounts. So we have 4 scenarios. And I guess Brian can maybe speak to the town side. But, I mean, these numbers don't really mean much unless we put it into terms of what are we losing when we do these further reductions, because we're gonna lose something. I guess we'll start with the very lowest. For the town side, what would reducing the town budget by 39,000 do to the town?
I have to figure out where to find it from. And where to cut. And what to cut. Do I cut a part-timer somewhere? I will preface it with, I don't like obviously having my hands tied as to telling me where I can take the money from, and that includes public safety. You will not like where the cuts come. I promise you that. You will not like where it is, and in my mind, and I'm not gonna say where it is. No. But there's a lot of things out there you don't want, that we don't wanna see. So if you're gonna tell me I can't take it out of public safety, tell me where you want it. Tell me where then, because my hands are tied. The 39,000. You know, last year at the last second, I got told just I don't want to say arbitrarily, but 50 grand. And hit me with 50. We just had to cut things, lots of things. And each year we cut. I'd make it work. And I'll be fine, is my answer.
What you're saying is you can't guarantee it wouldn't come from public safety.
I can guarantee it won't come from public safety if you tie my hands. Say it won't. But there's a lot of other things out there that you don't want to see touched either. The easiest thing to cut is public safety. We're not losing a job. You know, we're not putting someone in the unemployment line. And I'm not saying that would happen, and it wouldn't happen at 39,000 anyways.
And then on the board side, it would be on that 70-30 split that we're talking about, which is 70% on top of the already reduced 400,000. So we're talking reducing the Board of Ed budget by $491,000. Are we aware of what that does to the Board of Ed? Because it's part of our town budget and we're considering that. I think it would be negligent not to take into consideration what that does to the Board of Education. Are we aware what that does to the Board of Education? Sorry, Brian, that wasn't a question to you. Is there any way of verifying that?
Oh, you were talking to me. I thought you were talking to Wall. I'm sorry.
Well,
Was it someone
I wasn't sure if we were allowed to ask, that was kind of my hint. I wasn't sure if we were allowed to ask. Well, I know he knows the answer to that, but he's not
I would have to ask the chair if they wanted to, the vice chair, who's chairing the meeting, if he wants to invite Walton. I like hearing from Dr. Willett, so.
I think it would be wise to maybe hear what these scenarios do to Board of Ed, since that's what we're taking into consideration as well.
I'll allow point of order back questions. Dr. Will to answer those.
Mr. Vice Chair, if I may, please keep in mind, the Board of Education has not had the opportunity to sit and discuss the effects of yesterday's referendum vote. We had a meeting planned for today. That meeting was canceled so that we could participate here. While Dr. Willett can certainly reiterate the effects that any further cuts would be, I think we've discussed many of those in our previous discussions. Anything he told you now would be just a guess until the board had a chance to really sit down and analyze where we want with it.
Yeah, I think that's important context. It just happened yesterday, so we're still.
Well, but because where I'm nervous is Dr. Willett says that the effects will cut productions here. When he hasn't had a chance to take a look, the board hasn't really had an effect. And then the next thing you know, if he changes, then he's blasted an effigy for making things up. We have to be honest and understand if you're asking him for his opinion right now, it's his opinion, and that could all change when the board has a chance to sit and actually deliberate on what comes up.
So are you targeting 136.5 to the 97? No,
I think the very lowest scenario that's being proposed right now is the 50-50 split, which would be the very lowest impact to the Board of Ed that's being proposed, but it sounds like that's going to not be something that someone would consider because of the hit on the town. So I think what I'm considering is what is $491,000 reduction to the Board of Ed doing to the Board of Ed?
So, you already. You still have, right now in that budget, you have the reduction of 6 teachers, positions and 1 paraprofessional, in addition to a lot of program ones. You're adding on top of that, 65,000, you're talking about another position roughly. If you're talking about 91,000, another position plus some program, 3,000. If you're talking about 136.5, you're probably talking about 2 positions in addition to the 7 already reduced, 6 teachers, 1 para, and 2 more teaching positions. It's 136. So you're looking at a combination of staff and some kind of, and to keep in mind, a lot of program reductions are already. So the board would be struggling to find what specifically from a program to want to take. So it's about 65 per staff member if you want to look at. If you want to just use a number that fits these numbers.
So roughly for every 65,000, that's like a staff.
Yeah, at a certain step level, yes. The low steps are 52, the higher ones are 9, you're looking at 5 staff. So each of those, that 65 will probably a staff member, 91 staff member plus about 30. 136. And I know Ms. Gallatin had a question, and I'm giving you conjecture because the board hasn't met on it to determine what that would be. Is that sufficient? Do you guys want?
May I add something?
The sentence.
I clearly spoke Tony, so just to put it in realistic terms though, just like, Mr. Bully said, he would have to go back and look at it. You guys have seen what we've looked at before, so just for realistic purposes. It would be things that we've already taken off the table coming back on, right? So we have to look at computer education for those again. We have to look at reducing 6th grade by 2 teachers, which is 19 6th grade. TIS band, all of those things that we define table, those would be the things that we
put back on the table, and then like you guys discussed, more savings account. Some additional money in our ERF, we're only allowed to hold 1%. We'd have to discuss, if we felt comfortable taking any more out of that, just like you're just, if you want to go down to your 16%. So those would likely be where our discussion would go back to those scenarios, and maybe some additional ones, but those are the things that have come on and off the table in the last few discussions.
Thank you.
Can I get both of your names, like,
Tony Holt,
I'm sorry,
Tony Holt, HOLT.
and
Jen Galishant, GALLICHANT.
okay.
Any additional questions?
No, I think I have the answers to that. My position is, it sounds like there's not a single scenario here that would have a detrimental effect to both the town side and the Board of Ed side. And we have an answer to that. And Mr. Foley has said that this town does feel comfortable using an additional $100,000 out of unassigned fund balance. That could help with these reductions. And it doesn't cost our taxpayers any more money to use that. And it helps keep things more level without additional cuts. But for some reason, you all don't feel like that's a good solution.
Are you good? Then you the floor.
I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Right, Chris or Alex, would you like to speak? Good, you're good. Alex. Okay, I guess I'll speak now. Yeah, I still feel that it's gonna pass, you know, talk about these reductions and they're not, these aren't pleasant conversations, but we talk about what actually get past referendum. We're not even talking about real money here. Because no, historically, 3% is about the threshold. We gotta get close to 3% if we want this to pass. People, I still feel 3.24 is. I have good questions about whether that. You know, if it's what we can get out of here tonight. Vote on it. I still feel a lot more comfortable with 3.1. It's the best chance of us getting. You know, and getting a budget that. Which I think is very important. You know, as Mr. Councilor Shea actually said, you know, multiple failed referendums is not a good look for it. And as we get reevaluated this year, I hate to see having to go to referendum time after time and us end up costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars. Interest, potentially more if we get that. That's what's at stake here, you know. I can tell you one thing. That's a horrible use of money to spend all that extra money on interest. So that's my concern. That. Does anybody want to go around? Oh.
I'm sorry, I have to.
Oh.
I just want to make sure she was okay with it. The question was, do we want to go around the second time?
Yeah, you got any additional comments?
Honestly, Jacob, I just want to get on and vote. I mean, you know, we could be here all day again, and I'm not willing to be here all day. Not, it's another family like everybody. else.
Yeah.
So. I hear what you're saying, Jacob, you think 3.24 will be difficult? I think you're gonna a lot, and I just want to remind on the Board of Ed, who did transfer 650 to USO. So it might not be a big deal to Board of Ed, but it is overall a big deal. It is one of the largest increases the Board of Ed will see, and the town will pick up that side, and I'm okay with that, but I think for purposes of discussion tonight, that hasn't been mentioned a whole lot. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make a motion. 3.24, 70-30 split. All the number, police survey was at 38.54, 1.21, reduction 91, for bed, I think it was 39 in town. You know, I will put in there again, I know you don't want your hands tied, Brian, but public safety, okay, if that 1,200 or whatever, the 2,500 senior center and the, segments comes off, but other than that. You know, really uncomfortable with. That is my motion. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
This,
I,
did you have?
just thinking of places that to help recommend. The ACO budget is one of them that I'd be focusing on. And yeah, and
That's 5,000, there's $5,000.
there's different things I can do with that fund. Using the dog fund. to
Okay, so,
So I'm kind of, when you're talking public safety, that's,
I do forget about the animals, and I think I've mentioned to probably everybody
So when-
here about.
maybe. I can't tell you how to make your vote and all that, but that's one of the places I'd be trying to look for, because there's not a lot of places to go.
Okay, so, yes, I amend that to. Yes. No staff reductions in the fire department. I know that animal control, I think I questioned that a month ago. There was one line that was 500%, and it was $5,000. I know it's cheap, and it said it always gets taken out of its budget, and seems to have. So that is my motion.
So can you just verify again, no staff reductions to public safety?
Yeah.
Fire department and animal control?
I'm okay with the reduction to animal control. So animal control is part of public safety,
Oh,
so they need to make cuts to animal control. I would.
you would be okay with it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, so this motion's been made, is there a second? Motion. Once, twice. It doesn't look like there's a second for the motion. Oh,
I'm gonna have to make a motion. I know it's not gonna be popular with few people, but I will make a motion for the 3.1% increase with the 70-30 split. Down 30, Board of Ed 70%. I would also like the use of beginning of year budget numbers moved down to the town debt, that it reflects the increase in Board of Ed's budget. And I'll go with Colleen's position on using the public safety.
it's a point of clarification on that.
It's presentation, it doesn't affect.
No, actually not that point, but there are a couple things you said about public safety. You know staff reductions, public safety, or?
Oh, correct.
No. Oh, that's. Guess it's a motion on the floor. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. All right, so motion's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion on that motion? Is there any discussion on the 3.11 70-30 split? No staff reductions. Let's say other items within that allowed to be under consideration.
And that's with the 100,000 too, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you for keeping us. Yeah. Well, there's, nobody has anything to say. Guess move it to a vote. Or was it?
I request a vote.
Yes, do a roll call vote. Councilor Moran,
No.
Councilor Yudichak,
Aye.
Councilor Shay. Councilor Noonan. Councilor Buck.
No.
I'm an aye. Motion passes 4-2. All right, that brings us to item 6. Approval of a resolution authorizing form of the ballot for the May 21st, 2024 budget referendum. And the subsequent budget. So I might need to have a little bit of this, Brian. I thought it was like 1 AM when we talked about this last. We just have those numbers that we discussed, plugged in, and we can just kind of move to adopt this language.
Yes, we want, Lisa, you want to move through these numbers now in the draft resolution?
Yes. We'll just make it, right in here.
And Alex, I would ask you to amend the resolution on the second line where it says estimated, requires an estimated tax rate of, because that number can flex. Minor, but each year we put estimated in there. We did it last year, the year before.
Oh, sorry.
Second line, at the end of the second line on item 1 in the draft resolution,
Oh, yes.
which requires a then estimated tax rate.
Okay, yeah. All right,
This is the one that's been in charter. It's one we use, but each year we add an estimate.
okay. All right, this is just putting the numbers in and then. So I have a question about that, Brian. Given that this referendum is in 2 weeks, will there be an informational flyer or is there not enough turnaround time?
No, not enough turnaround time.
I guess let's say something there then.
On the estimated, yes.
No, on the informational, flyer.
I'm sorry.
We can't do an informational flyer for it.
We cannot, there will be one printed because we have to provide them with absentee ballots. But there's not time to mail them.
Okay,
2 years ago, we looked into, when we were in this situation, we looked into the legality of having it posted in the polling locations.
mhm,
And I believe we were able to do that. Typically, you're not supposed to post anything that the residents don't have access to prior to their vote.
yes,
But because of budget referendum scenarios, I believe it was allowed. And we'll confer with Rick Conti on that to make sure.
okay. No, thank you for that background.
Okay, some of the language in this draft, resolution says decrease and stuff like that, so that can't say that.
Okay,
Do you want me to read it to you? Or-
yeah, let's just read it out loud, so we're all on the same page with it.
Shall the town of Tolland's proposed 2024-2025 budget of 64,364,940, reflecting a spending increase of $2,813,583, or 4.57%, which requires an estimated tax rate of 38.49 mils, for an increase of 1.16 mils or 3.11% be adopted.
I'll entertain a motion or, yeah, go ahead, Brian.
With the estimated
Yes.
in that line.
Yeah.
Oh, you said that. I'm sorry. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to adopt, the draft referendum language as stated, so with the estimated verbiage. Or I'm entertaining a motion, I can't make one. So let's make a motion. Do I have a second on that motion? Second. Okay. Any discussion? Oh, all
I'll
right.
just say thank
Yep.
you, I'm sorry, thank you, Lisa, running all these numbers and doing what you do best. Brian, so.
Absolutely. No discussion, I think we can do voice vote on that. All those in favor?
I think we want to do a
Oh, we'll
roll
do
call.
roll call. No, abstain. Counselor Jay, Counselor Newman, Counselor Butler,
Abstain.
I'm an aye, so that motion carries. Language is adopted. With that, brings us to item 7 on the agenda adjournment. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Or,
All right, I'm with the.
so Shay makes a motion, Counselor Noonan seconds.
I do all of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
any objection to adjournment? Doesn't look like there is, then we are adjourned at 9:46. All right.